Alright, so hopefully in the last lesson students got the idea of fear conditioning, really important concept in PTSD and looking at the effects of emotion on cognition. Now we're going to look at where the amygdala plays a role in this. And this is why I like to do the look at the amygdala in the criminology unit, and also looking at the prefrontal cortex and their relative roles in emotion and thinking, because these come up again in PTSD. So if they've already learned about that in year one or earlier in criminology, this is just reinforcing, and it's not a whole bunch of new learning in the second year. So I like that connection that we can make across those units. So so we looked at the last lesson. Actually, fear conditioning is one example of how emotion, which is a fear, can affect cognition, which is learning. But I think it's not a great one to use in terms of what examiners will be looking for. So we're going to go a little bit further and look at what we're looking at here is the effects of cortisol on memory. Because if we think emotion is stress, stress releases cortisol, cortisol affects memory. And what this also does is give us another example of a hormone affecting behavior. And in fact, I think cortisol and memory is a really good one, especially for lower level students to use for their exam for looking at effects of hormones on behavior. Testosterone and aggression can be a little bit tricky. So what we're looking at here is how activation of the amygdala affects memory formation. And just to summarize that really quickly, it's activating the amygdala, releases cortisol, and that's going to enhance memory. And we'll see that in Buchanan's study. But before we get there, I like to come back and show, in this 1 minute of the BBC documentary, they talk about the actual story of baby Albert. I won't give away the ending, it's a little sad. Charades, this is a good game to play. They write down a key term and then they have to act out in front of their group, and you know how charades works. Kahoot is another good recap. And this is an activity again to make the abstract a little more concrete. We've got old Khan the caveman here, because we're thinking about evolutionary explanations, which by the way, this can also double as an evolutionary explanation of behavior. But the story is, he's coming across the forest and he finds a bear. Now, would it be more advantageous for him to remember it or to forget about it? Okay, so he's going to feel stress, he's going to get scared, that's going to release the cortisol. From an evolutionary point of view, from a survival point of view, which one would be better? And hopefully they figure out that it would be better for him to remember it. Yeah, this is an actual one. It might be a good reminder here to tell students, when we talk about, don't write about cavemen in exam answers, but maybe early ancestors is a better word to use instead. Then I get into a chalk and talk about Buchanan's study. So just explaining this, there's no real fun way to do this study, I don't think, and it's pretty basic. So we can talk about the study and what they found out. And then we talk about the evolutionary explanation about this. Why can acute stress, why from an evolutionary point of view, why would acute stress improve memory? And it's for things like so we can learn how to avoid danger. People, places, or things that are dangerous that we didn't know about, their sense of danger, we get stressed when we encounter them the first time, we learn, right? So it's a survival adaptation. Now, hopefully from what we've talked about, they should be able to figure out how activation of the amygdala affects memory. And really what they also want to be able to get out of the study is Buchanan and Lavello's research and the aims and methods. So also double check their workbooks to make sure they've got fully detailed notes about that. Yeah. Okay, so for this next part, you can post these questions that have come from previous topics, and students use their traffic lights and say, could they explain the multi-store model? Peterson, and this is just recapping the key questions from previous lessons and seeing how well they could answer them. Then we get into the last lesson in this topic, the hippocampus's role in e-memory.